In the busy city of Ikomo, a young woman named Adana worked as a cleaner in a large office building. Every morning, she arrived early with her worn-out mop, sweeping and scrubbing the floors before anyone else even showed up. Her uniform was old and faded, but she wore it with quiet pride. She believed in doing her job well, no matter how small it seemed. But not everyone respected her. Chuka, a proud and arrogant junior manager, made it his mission to embarrass her. Every time he passed by, he would wrinkle his nose like something smelled bad. He would say loudly, "Trash deserves trash," so that others could hear and laugh. People in the office joined in with snide looks and whispered jokes. But Adana never responded. She kept her head down, held her mop tighter, and cleaned with care. Deep inside, she felt the sting of their words, but she also held something stronger, a quiet dream and an even stronger will. While others laughed, Adana was already building a future they couldn't see. The same uniform they mocked was the one she used to walk silently toward greatness. It was a hot Monday afternoon, and the office building buzzed with noise. Phones rang, keyboards clicked, and laughter echoed in the staff room. Adana, wearing her faded uniform and carrying her old mop, entered quietly to clean up as usual. The room was full of workers taking their lunch break. Some ignored her, others rolled their eyes. But Chuka, the junior manager with too much pride and too little kindness, decided to make her the joke of the day again. He looked at her from across the room, smirked, and stood up in front of everyone. "Look at this," Chuka said loudly, pointing at Adana as she scrubbed the floor near his shiny shoes. "Still on your knees with that mop, huh?" The staff room went quiet. Then he laughed cruelly and added, "Even in 10 lifetimes, you'll never sit at a desk. This mop is your destiny." A few people covered their mouths and chuckled. Others shook their heads and whispered. Some just laughed freely, not caring that Adana could hear every word. But Adana didn't say a thing. She didn't look up. She didn't cry. She didn't beg for respect. She just kept scrubbing, her hands moving slowly but firmly. Inside, her heart felt heavy, but her spirit stood tall. As the laughter faded around her, she whispered a quiet prayer under her breath. A small, steady prayer she said every day. She asked for strength, for patience, and for the chance to change her life. Many people thought Adana was just a cleaner. To them, she was invisible. But what no one saw was the fire in her. Every insult she heard only made her stronger. Every laugh behind her back became a step forward in her silent journey. She wasn't just scrubbing floors. She was scrubbing away every limitation the world had placed on her. She wasn't just picking up trash. She was picking up pieces of a better future. When her shift ended, Adana didn't go home to rest like everyone else. She took a small bag from her locker and rushed off to evening classes. The school was far, and her legs were tired, but she didn't miss a single day. She sat in the back of the classroom, eyes wide open, soaking up every word from the teacher. Her books were second-hand, some pages torn, but she read them like treasures. After school, she walked back home in the dark, using the little money she earned to buy candles so she could study through the night. Weekends weren't for resting either. Adana woke up early, mixed flour and sugar, and fried puff-puff in a small pan. She sold them on the street with a smile. The money was little, but she saved every kobo. She didn't spend on new clothes or fancy food. Every coin went into her education, one class at a time, one exam at a time. No one knew about this life. No one saw the tired nights, the sore hands, the hunger, the tears she wiped alone in silence. Back at work, the insults continued. Chuka and a few others mocked her every chance they got. "You'll die with that mop," he said again one day, laughing as if it was the funniest thing in the world. But this time, Adana paused for a moment. She looked up at him, not with anger, not with pain, but with calm eyes full of quiet strength. She didn't say a word. She just gave a small smile and returned to her cleaning. Years went by. The laughter grew quieter, but Adana's steps grew stronger. She never raised her voice, never fought back, never explained herself. She let her work and her dream speak for her. Behind every mop stroke was a lesson she had learned. Behind every silent night was a goal she refused to give up on. She believed that her time would come. not through luck, but through hard work, faith, and unshakable courage. People like Chuka thought they were better because they had desks and titles, but they never understood that true power comes from the heart. They never guessed that the woman they laughed at would one day be the one who changed the rules. And while they laughed loudly for a moment, Adana was writing her story, quietly, patiently, one page at a time. When the office lights went off and everyone had gone home, Adana was still there, mopping the last corners of the hallway in silence. Her hands were tired, her back ached, and her shoes were worn out. But when her work was done, she didn't rest. She didn't lie down or scroll through a phone. Instead, she picked up her old school bag, full of books with dog-eared pages, and walked out into the night. She headed to a small evening school on the edge of the city. It wasn't a fancy place. The chairs were broken, the chalkboard was cracked, and sometimes there was no electricity. But to Adana, it was a palace of dreams. She sat quietly in the back of the classroom, always ready to learn. The teachers knew her as the quiet girl who never missed a lesson. Even when it rained or when she looked too tired to walk, she had no laptop, no fancy notebook, just a pen, a small exercise book, and the kind of focus that only comes from deep hunger. Not hunger for food, but for a better life. At night, when she returned home, the house was small and dim. She lit a candle and placed it beside her books. The flame was small, but her determination was big. She studied for hours, going over notes, solving math problems, learning big English words she had never heard before. Sometimes the candle would melt completely, and she'd sit in the dark, repeating what she had learned out loud, just to remember. Sleep came late, and only for a few hours. Weekends were not for rest either. Before the sun rose, Adana was already up, mixing flour, sugar, and water in a bowl. She fried puff-puff in a small pan over a charcoal stove. Her hands worked fast. She packed them in small plastic bags and walked to the market to sell. "Hot puff-puff," she would shout with a smile. Some days she sold a lot, some days only a little. But every kobo she earned was carefully saved. She didn't spend on clothes, not even on new shoes. All her money went into one thing: education. People saw her on the street and in the office and thought she was just a cleaner. No one knew that the same girl they ignored was studying to become more. No one knew that behind her tired eyes were big dreams, and behind her quiet smile was a fire that never stopped burning. When others partied, she studied. When others slept, she worked. Every little coin she held, she treated like gold. And slowly, year after year, she paid for her evening classes. It wasn't easy. There were days she felt like giving up. Days she went hungry so she could afford a textbook. Days she cried alone, wondering if it was all worth it. But she never stopped. She believed that one day, all the pain would become power. All the struggle would become success. After many years of hard work, Adana passed her exams. She got accepted into a university, not through luck, but through sweat, tears, and courage. She didn't have much, but she walked into that university with her head held high. She was older than most of the other students, but she didn't care. She sat in front, asked questions, studied harder than anyone else in the room. She remembered every insult Chuka had thrown at her. She remembered the laughter, the mocking words, the shame, but she used them as fuel. She told herself, "They laughed at me then, but one day they will clap for me." And as she moved through school, year after year, her life began to change. Slowly, the girl with the mop was becoming the woman with the plan. She still worked part-time. She still sold puff-puff during holidays. She still studied by candlelight when things were tough. But now she could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Not a candle flame, but a bright, full sun rising in her future. No one saw the nights she stayed awake, crying quietly, but choosing to keep going. No one saw the blisters on her feet or the burns on her hands from cooking all day. But those scars were not signs of weakness. They were medals of honor. Every one of them told a story of strength, patience, and unshakable belief. Adana's journey was not quick. It was not easy, but it was real. She didn't take shortcuts. She didn't wait for someone to help her. She built her path one step at a time, with her hands, her heart, and her faith, and the coins she once picked up carefully from the market floor now carried her name, not because of magic, but because of grit. Adana was no longer just the girl with the mop. She was a fighter, a dreamer, and one day soon, she would be more than even she had imagined. 5 years had passed since Adana walked those same office floors with a mop in her hand. Time had moved forward, but her journey had been anything but easy. She had climbed each step slowly, with long nights, tired hands, sleepless weekends, and silent prayers. She had finished her university education with top marks. She had worked hard, taken internships, and gained experience. She had applied for better jobs, and slowly her world changed. But while she was rising, no one in the office knew what was happening behind the scenes. To them, she had disappeared, just another cleaner gone, replaced by someone new. They never thought twice about her again. Then one morning, news broke in the office. A new branch director was arriving. People rushed around cleaning desks, fixing ties, applying fresh lipstick. There was excitement in the air, and even Chuka, now a senior staff guy, stood tall, hoping to impress the new boss. He adjusted his collar, sprayed extra perfume, and practiced his greeting. Everyone lined up neatly at the entrance, waiting for the black SUV they were told would bring the director. Then it happened. The SUV rolled in slowly and stopped right in front of the office. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. All eyes turned to see who would step out. And then, silence. Chuka's mouth opened, but no words came out. His eyes grew wide. His heart almost stopped. Because the person who stepped out of that shiny SUV, dressed in a sharp power suit, heels clicking confidently on the pavement, was none other than Adana. Yes, the same Adana he had laughed at, the same girl he once called trash, the one he mocked for mopping floors. But now she was different. Her hair was neatly styled, her face calm and full of quiet power. Her shoulders were straight, her presence strong. She didn't need to say a word. Just her arrival said everything. The workers stared in shock. Some gasped. Others whispered to each other, "Is that really her?" The silence grew heavy. Adana walked past them slowly, her heels making a gentle tap with every step. She gave a small smile. Not arrogant, just peaceful. Her eyes met Chuka's for a moment. He looked like he had seen a ghost. His pride melted right there in front of everyone. All those years of mocking her were now crashing down like bricks on his chest. Adana turned to him gently and said, "Good morning, Mr. Chuka." Her voice was calm, steady, and kind, with no anger at all. But those simple words hit harder than any insult ever could. Chuka swallowed hard, his hands shaking slightly. His voice was stuck in his throat. Adana continued walking, entered the building, and everyone followed behind like children following their teacher. Her name was already on the office door. Branch Director, Mrs. Adana Nwosu. It was printed in bold letters, shining under the glass. That name, once ignored, now demanded respect. Inside the building, people stared at her in amazement. Staff members who had never noticed her before now rushed to greet her. They smiled nervously, trying to pretend they had always been kind. But Adana remembered. She didn't hold hate in her heart. She didn't need to. Her success was enough. She sat in her new office, the same building where she once cleaned toilets and scrubbed floors. The chair was soft, the desk wide and beautiful. She ran her fingers over the wood for a second and took a deep breath. It wasn't just furniture. It was a throne she had earned with blood, sweat, and patience. Chuka, meanwhile, stood frozen near the entrance, still unable to believe what had just happened. He who once said she'd never sit at a desk, now watched her behind the biggest desk in the building. He had power once, but now his pride had no ground to stand on. Adana didn't need revenge. Her rise was louder than any shout. She didn't gloat. She didn't boast. She simply did what she always did, kept moving forward. Now she didn't carry a mop. She carried the future. She had meetings to attend, papers to sign, and lives to impact. And the staff? They quickly learned a new lesson. Never look down on anyone, because the person you mock today might be the one you salute tomorrow. The air inside the office was heavy with shock. No one spoke. No one moved. Adana had just walked past the front entrance in her crisp power suit, with calm eyes and the quiet confidence of a woman who had climbed mountains. The staff still couldn't believe it. The same woman they once passed by without a second glance, the one they laughed at for her uniform and her mop, was now their new branch director. And as she stepped into the building, her heels gently clicking on the polished marble floor, all eyes followed her. Everyone stood frozen, especially Chuka. Chuka, once the loudest voice mocking Adana, was now the quietest man in the room. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to stand tall. He straightened his tie, wiped the sweat off his forehead and tried to keep a proud face. But inside, his heart was racing. It was as if the ghosts of all his past words were standing around him, whispering back the same insults he had once thrown at her. "Trash deserves trash," he had said. "You'll never sit at a desk," he had laughed. But now, those same words echoed in his own ears, and they burned. Adana stopped for a moment at the centre of the lobby. The silence was thick. She slowly turned and looked directly at Chuka. Her expression was calm, not angry. Her face held a soft smile, but it was powerful, the kind of smile that said, "I remember everything." She took a single step closer to him, and everyone held their breath. Then she spoke. Her voice was gentle, even kind, but firm. "Clean this up before I return," she said, pointing at a small coffee spill on the floor nearby. That was all it took. Chuka's legs gave out, his knees buckled, his pride cracked wide open, and before anyone could catch him, he collapsed, right there on the shiny marble floor, the same floor Adana had once mopped while he threw insults her way. His fall echoed across the room. Some staff gasped, others covered their mouths in disbelief. The security guard rushed forward, but Adana didn't even flinch. She simply turned and walked away with grace. There was something poetic about it. The very ground Chuka had once seen as beneath him was now where he lay, not just in shock, but in shame. The floor he thought only low people cleaned was now the place that caught him when reality slapped him across the face. No one dared laugh. The office was too stunned. But in their minds, every single person there was thinking the same thing. This was the moment Karma knocked on the door, and Adana answered it in heels. Chuka didn't faint just from the surprise. It wasn't just the embarrassment or the shock of seeing Adana as his new boss. It was the weight of his own past crashing down on him all at once. Every insult, every cruel joke, every time he looked down on her, all of it came rushing back. And now, there she stood, shining like success itself, while he lay on the cold, hard floor. When Chuka was finally helped up, he couldn't even look her in the eye. He avoided her gaze, lips trembling, pride broken into pieces. And Adana? She didn't need to say anything more. Her walk through the building was enough. She didn't fire him. She didn't humiliate him in return. That would have been too small for someone who had grown so big. As she entered her new office, large, bright, and quiet, she paused for a moment. She looked around the room, then at the view outside the window. From this high up, she could see the whole city. She could see the streets where she once sold Puff Puff. She could picture the path she walked to night school. She could almost feel the old mop in her hands. But now, all of it was behind her. Not forgotten, but turned into fuel. That same day, whispers filled every corner of the building. Some staff felt inspired, some felt ashamed, but all of them understood one thing clearly. Adana was no ordinary woman. She was proof that quiet strength beats loud pride. She had climbed from the floor to the top, without stepping on anyone, without needing to shout. And Chuka, he had fallen, not just physically, but deeply, in his own heart. The lesson he learned that day would stay with him forever. Sometimes it takes just one smile and 5 simple words to bring a giant to his knees. Clean this up before I return. The mop he once laughed at had become her crown. The floor he mocked had taken back its respect, and the woman he once called nothing was now everything. Adana sat behind her new desk, the same kind she had once cleaned every morning with quiet hands. But now her hands held power. She didn't come to take revenge. No, her heart was too full of grace. The same Chuka who once mocked her stood silently, waiting for punishment. But instead of firing him, Adana simply nodded and gave him work to do. It was more painful than shouting, because kindness from someone you once hurt cuts deeper than anger. But Adana's real focus wasn't on him. It was on the others, the cleaners, the janitors, the people in dusty uniforms who had been invisible for too long. She called them in, one by one. With a soft smile, she promoted them, raised their salaries, and gave them new uniforms with dignity stitched into every thread. She even created a scholarship fund from her own salary, so that no one who wanted to learn would have to mop floors forever, unless they chose to. People who once laughed at her now lined up every month to collect salaries signed by her name. And in her office, right behind her desk, hung one special thing, her old mop, framed in glass. Not as a reminder of shame, but of victory, a symbol that from dirt, dreams can rise.